Hello and welcome to World Connect, your window to the world. In this special edition, we turn the spotlight on the biggest political battle in the world, the US presidential elections. From the developments in the past weeks to controversies haunting the Republican and Democrat frontrunners, what is their stand on major issues? How does a presidential election really unfold? We bring you all the action, all that and much more in the next half an hour. Let's begin with the focus of the show. In final week before the US elections, bitter personal attacks continue between the frontrunners. Clinton says Trump praises adversaries like Putin and picks fights with allies. Trump hits back, calls Clinton a liar. Americans head for early voting as the world awaits November 8 opinion polls suggest close contest between Trump and Clinton. Global markets turn jittery over outcome of the US polls. Brexit woes continue to haunt UK. British High Court says Brexit requires parliamentary vote. Government to appeal in Supreme Court, vows to respect June referendum. Heavy fighting in Mosul between Iraqi forces and the Islamic State. Government forces break through IS defenses and recapture key areas. IS chief Baghdadi says no retreat from Mosul assault. In just a few days, America and the world will know who will occupy the powerful Oval Office. As months of high-octane campaigning is coming to a close, the previous week was no different. FBI was under attack from President Obama for its renewed interest in Clinton's email scandal. Opinion polls predict a photo finish since the gap between Clinton and Trump is narrowing every passing day. Meanwhile, the bitterness of the political duel is reflected on the streets as an African-American church is vandalized in Mississippi.
With the last week of the race for the most powerful office in the world drawing closer, the air is thick with nervousness and excitement. Will the seasoned politician Clinton convert her popularity to a victory, or will the controversial billionaire Trump pull a Brexit-style upset? Continuing with his support to the former Secretary of State, President Obama joined Clinton in attacking Trump and questioning the timing of FBI's renewed interest in Clinton's email scandal just days before the election. Obama has warned America that the fate of the world is at risk if Donald Trump is elected president. Clinton too was seen trying her best to project Trump as the bad choice.
Imagine having a president who demeans women, mocks the disabled, insults Latinos, African Americans, Muslims, POWs, who pits people against each other instead of pulling us together. Someone with a very thin skin who lashes out at anyone who challenges him, who praises adversaries like Vladimir Putin and picks fights with our allies and even insults the Pope.
Although Clinton still leads in most national and state opinion polls, the renewed focus on her email fiasco by the FBI has significantly reduced the lead margin over her Republican adversary. In fact, a national poll showed that Donald Trump has taken a slender lead over Clinton.
She lied to the FBI and she lied to the American people many, many times. If she were to win, it would create unprecedented constitutional crisis.
Markets across the globe came under pressure this week after media reports suggested narrowing gap between Clinton and Trump. Market anxiety has deepened over a possible Trump victory given the uncertainty on the Republican candidate's stance on issues including foreign policy, trade relations and immigration, while Clinton is viewed as a candidate of the status quo. An already toxic campaign by the frontrunners was showing disturbing reverberation in the society at large this week. An African-American church in Mississippi was burned and vandalized. The vandals also spray-painted the phrase "Vote Trump" on the church wall. Police are investigating if the fire was intended to intimidate voters. While candidates make their last-ditch effort to woo the voters, a study claimed a significant cross-section of American voters are disillusioned by the state of American politics, with many unsure if either major party nominee can unite the country after the bitter election season. As new controversies continue to haunt both Democratic and Republican camps, the closely fought election has become one of the most unpredictable political battles in American history.
The world is watching with bated breath as Americans are all set to elect their new president. For nearly 1.5 years, much has been discussed, debated and devoured about the two key candidates, Democrat Hillary Clinton and Republican Donald Trump, to the extent that at times it seemed an overdose. Let's take a closer look at both the candidates. First, let's see Clinton's journey so far.
From First Lady of the country to Senator and Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton has served many roles in US politics. Her path to political office began on the sidelines as the wife of then Governor of Arkansas, Bill Clinton. During Bill Clinton's two presidential terms from 1993 to 2001, Hillary Clinton was very active in public life and campaigned for women's rights and universal health care, raising her profile both at home and internationally. She faced accusations of wrongdoings in various scandals throughout Bill Clinton's second term of presidency. During an investigation into the Whitewater affair, a failed real estate project in which the Clintons had invested, she also faced congressional hearings. The couple was later cleared of wrongdoing. She was also in media focus over her husband's relationship with White House intern Monica Lewinsky, which came to light in 1998. Clinton in an interview said the scandal was inspired by a vast right-wing conspiracy. As a New York senator, she positioned herself in the center of the Democratic Party. She voted for the invasion of Iraq in 2003, but distanced herself from the conduct of the conflict and called for the withdrawal of US troops. She easily won re-election as a senator in 2006. She sought the Democratic nomination for presidential election in 2008. However, critics, including her own party, saw her as a divisive figure for whom many Americans would never vote. As President Barack Obama's Secretary of State from 2008 to 2013, she visited 112 countries, more than any other previous Secretary of State. Hillary Clinton and State Department came under severe criticism in September 2012, in which the US ambassador was among those killed. In one of the congressional hearings, Clinton said she took responsibility for security failures at the outpost. Shortly before Mrs. Clinton's announcement of her candidacy, she was accused of using a private email server as Secretary of State and may have breached federal rules. She was accused of compromising national security. She admitted her mistake and even apologized. Throughout her primary campaign for Democratic nomination, the email controversy kept haunting her. Her rival and very popular Bernie Sanders performed better than expected, but finally she successfully secured the nomination.
In the corridors of power and among the American masses, his politically incorrect style attracts both admiration and admonishment. From wanting to shut out the Mexicans and the Muslims to his sexist remarks against women, one scandal after another, nothing seems to halt his march. No one could imagine Trump would come this far. Let's take a look at Donald Trump's journey from a real estate tycoon to becoming the political disruptor.
Once he entered the Republican presidential race on June 16, 2015, Donald Trump managed to be simultaneously charismatic and combative, elitist and populist, as he tapped into a vein of polarity and anti-Washington anger among American voters. It was his first run for public office, and Trump called it a movement, not a campaign. Supercharging the bluster, hyperbole and media mastery made him one of the world's best-known businessmen. It took Trump a little more than 10 months to vanquish 16 other candidates and win the Republican nomination, but in so doing he created a rift in the party. Son of New York real estate tycoon Fred Trump, he helped manage his father's extensive portfolio of residential housing projects in New York City, boroughs, and took control of the company, which he renamed the Trump Organization in 1971. He shifted his family's real estate business from residential units to glitzy projects and erecting the most famous properties, many of them bearing famous names as Trump Place, Trump World Tower, Trump International Hotel and Tower, and so on. He also developed hotels and casinos, an arm of the business that has led to 4 bankruptcy filings. Under the banner, Make America Great Again, Trump has run a controversial campaign throughout. He offered plans to win economic concessions from China, to build a wall on the southern U.S. border, to keep out undocumented immigrants, and to make Mexico pay for it. He vowed to repeal Obamacare while being, quote, the greatest jobs president that God ever created, unquote, and keeping Muslims out of the country. The rise of Trump, once a registered Democrat, threatened to blow up the Republican Party. Its establishment challenged his commitment to their tenets and organized against him. Prominent Republicans, including former presidents George H.W. Bush and George W. Bush, and congressional leaders shunned him or offered lukewarm support. Trump used Twitter as a weapon, firing off insults and mockery at those who offended him, including crooked Hillary and Republican rivals Little Marco Rubio, Jeb Low-Energy Bush, and lying Ted Cruz. Trump regularly made comments that would have doomed a more conventional candidate, such as when he said his supporters were so loyal that he could shoot someone on Fifth Avenue in New York and not lose a single vote. Despite massive protests at his campaign events and the best efforts of his Republican rivals Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio, Trump became the presumptive Republican Party nominee for president after the Indiana primary.
From a giant wall on the Mexican border to allegations of rigged elections, from charges of sexual misconduct to accusations of irresponsible use of private email, the campaign season saw a new low in the history of American politics. And what the two presidential frontrunners had to say about them.
I would build a great wall, and nobody builds walls better than me, believe me. And I will build a great, great wall on our southern border, and I will have Mexico pay for that wall. Mark my words.
When it comes to the wall that Donald talks about building, he went to Mexico, he had a meeting with the Mexican president, didn't even raise it, he choked, and then got into a Twitter war because the Mexican president said, we're not paying for that wall.
And I'm afraid the election's going to be rigged, I have to be honest. Because I think my side was rigged if I didn't win by massive landslides.
He is basically saying, hey, we've been around 240 years, and we've always had peaceful transitions, no matter who won or who lost. Look, if you lose an election, I've lost elections, you don't feel very good the next day, do you? But we know in our country the difference between leadership and dictatorship, right?
I respect women. I love women. I cherish women. You know, Hillary Clinton said he shouldn't cherish. Well, I said, I do cherish. I cherish women.
Donald thinks belittling women makes him bigger. He goes after their dignity, their self-worth.
Every woman lied when they came forward to hurt my campaign. Total fabrication. The events never happened, never. All of these liars will be sued after the election is over.
Using a private email.
That's for sure.
And if I had to do it over again, I would obviously do it differently. But I'm not going to make any excuses. It was a mistake, and I take responsibility for that.
Donald J. Trump is calling for a total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the United States until our country's representatives can figure out what the hell is going on.
You could put half of Trump supporters into what I call the basket of deplorables. Right? The racist, sexist, homophobic, xenophobic, Islamophobic, you name it.
Beyond personal attacks, Clinton and Trump also clashed over a number of socio-political climate change. Each candidate argued that their respective stand was necessary to take America to new heights. Once elected as president, the implementation of these policies could have far. Here's a roundup of the respective stand of Republican Donald Trump and Democrat Hillary Clinton on key issues that dominated months of high-octane campaigning. Immigration, reductions in legal immigrations and more stringent efforts to reduce the number of these migrants living in the U.S. Trump wanted to temporarily shut the U.S. border to Muslim immigrants, later relax his stand and propose extreme vetting. Clinton believes Trump's wall is unaffordable, unrealistic to ensure border security. She hails US as a nation of immigrants, wants to build upon President Obama's reforms normalizing the immigration status of long-term undocumented residents of the US and their families. She wants to introduce reforms for undocumented immigrants to obtain permanent legal residency and eventually US citizenship. Job creation. To make America great again, Trump has promised to bring back jobs that are lost to other countries like India and China, particularly in manufacturing. He proposes to bring down corporate tax from 35% to 15% and believes that investing in infrastructure, cutting the trade deficit and lowering taxes and removing regulations will boost job creation. He has promised 25 million new jobs in the next 10 years. Clinton's strategy is tax revenue from wealthier class to create more opportunities for the middle class. She wants to invest in advanced manufacturing, technology and renewable energy and small businesses. She wants to increase employment training. She is confident that her plans will lead to creation of 10 million new jobs in the coming years. Foreign policy. Donald Trump has opposed the Iraq war and other US-led military action in the Middle East. Trump has taken a hardline stance towards combating IS. He maintains that the US foots too much of the bill for the alliance and that other allies should spend more on their own protection. He has called for closer relations with Vladimir Putin's Russia. As Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton supported the US war in Iraq and the US campaign in Libya. She says US should take an expanded role in fighting IS. She firmly backs the US role in NATO, seeing it as important for strengthening European allies and countering Russian power. Climate change. Donald Trump opposes economically damaging environmental regulations backed by political agenda. He supports clean water and air but wants to slash funding to the Environmental Protection Agency. He has also called the man-made climate change a hoax. Clinton toes the party line on environmental issues and says adverse climate change is a threat. She supports stringent regulations of the energy industry and opposes expanded drilling in Alaska and construction of Keystone oil pipeline from Canada. Gun laws. Trump vociferously supports right of American people to bear arms. He enjoys strong backing from the gun lobby and upholds the Second Amendment. He accuses Clinton of wanting to eliminate gun rights. Hillary Clinton supports tighter background checks and a ban on assault weapons to check the menace of mass shootings. She denies the Second Amendment will be in peril if she wins. And we're heading for a short break now. More on US poll and the latest happenings from around the world to follow. Keep watching World Connect.
खेत से खलिहान से मान से सम्मान से
खेत से खलिहान से मान से सम्मान से
धरती से आसमान से ज्ञान से विज्ञान से 50 सालों से निभाया रिश्ता हर किसान से भारत के स्वाभिमान से
सुपर बाइक से लेकर ट्रक तक सब दौड़ाते हैं। सारे देश का इंजन हम ही तो चलाते हैं। HP Lubricants A to Z आपके काम आते हैं।
अब मैं अपने लाइफ की सबसे बड़ी मूवमेंट लीड करने जा रहा हूँ, जो इंडिया के लिए बहुत जरूरी है। आपको खड़ा होना पड़ेगा मेरे साथ टीम स्वच्छ भारत मिशन का हिस्सा बनकर, और हम सब मिलकर एक ऐसा इंडिया बनाएंगे जहाँ हर कोई टॉयलेट यूज करता हो, क्योंकि जब सब टॉयलेट यूज करेंगे तो सब प्रोग्रेस करेंगे।
बड़ी परेशान लग रही हो?
कुछ समझ नहीं आ रहा। पहले तो शहर बदला, घर बदला और अब यहाँ आधार में पता भी बदलना पड़ेगा।
नाम में सुधार या पता इत्यादि बदलना इंटरनेट से घर बैठे संभव है। तुम जो मोबाइल नंबर इस्तेमाल कर रही हो वो आधार में रजिस्टर्ड तो है ना? अब आधार की वेबसाइट uidai.gov.in पर जाकर नया एड्रेस टाइप करके अपना एड्रेस प्रूफ अपलोड कर दो।
ये तो सचमुच आसान है।
मेरी परेशानियों का समाधान, मेरा आधार, मेरी पहचान।
बच्चन जी।
बोलिए बच्चा जी।
आपने वो फिल्म जादूगर की थी ना?
ना की थी।
तो मुझे जादू दिखाइए।
अच्छा। ये देखो मैं यहाँ पत्थर मारूंगा, यहाँ से कबूतर चिड़िया सब निकलेंगे। वो गया देखो, कबूतर चिड़िया सब उड़ गए।
बच्चन जी।
हाँ जी।
बस इतना ही?
हाँ और क्या?
अब मेरा जादू देखिए। ये वाला पत्थर वहाँ मारूंगा और इंसान निकलेंगे।
इंसान?
हाँ इंसान।
अरे कौन है भाई?
अरे यार क्यों तुम लोग गांव की इज्जत पे धब्बा लगा रहे हो? बाहर से लोग आएंगे तो क्या सोचेंगे? स्वच्छ भारत अभियान के अंतर्गत भारत सरकार जो है वो शौचालय बनाने में मदद कर रही है, तो आप भी अपने घर में शौचालय बनाइए, परिवार को उसका इस्तेमाल करवाइए। अच्छा मेरी नहीं सुनते हैं तो
मैं नहीं मानता कि तंबाकू जानलेवा है। मैं नहीं मानता कि तंबाकू जानलेवा है। मैं नहीं मानता तंबाकू जानलेवा है।
चाहे हम कुछ भी कहें, कुछ लोग हमारा संदेश नहीं सुनते।
मैं नहीं मानता।
तंबाकू जानलेवा है। ये चेतावनी हर पैक पर है। इसे पढ़िए और इस पर विश्वास कीजिए।
Come November 8, Americans will seal the fate of the and Republican Donald Trump. So how do Americans elect their president? What is the process like? Well, take a look at this report.
It's interesting to know that even many Americans do not understand the presidential election process completely. American presidential polls are always held on the first Tuesday after the first Monday in November. Most people who voted early or are voting on November 8th think they will be electing Democrat Hillary Clinton, Republican Donald Trump, or their chosen third-party candidate. But actually, they will not be president or vice president. Instead, they work on the electoral college system. An electoral college consisting of 538 voters elects the occupants of two top offices. These 538 members represent the 50 states and the District of Columbia. A candidate needs to secure at least 270 votes to be declared a winner. Americans, while choosing the candidates they are voting for, are actually casting their ballot for the electors in their respective states. These electors will then vote for the candidates who got the highest popular votes in that state. The number of electors, two in each state, and congressional district representatives. Nearly all the states have winner-take-all policies, which means winner of the popular vote gets all the electors of that state. Only Maine and Nebraska have proportional distribution of the electors. In these two states, two electors are chosen by popular statewide vote and the remainder are chosen according to the popular vote in each congressional district. The more populated a state is, the more number of electors it has. For example, the most populous state of California has 55 electors. Texas has 39 each. In the race to get to the magic number of 270, it's the swing states that often matter the most. Democrats or Republicans generally do not waste efforts or resources on states they are confident of winning or which have been traditionally on their respective sides. They in fact focus on swing states, which are the states that give no clear signals and can go either way. Florida, Ohio, Virginia, Colorado, North Carolina and Nevada are considered the key swing states where both Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump put a greater focus.
From 1989 to 2016, the history of presidential elections in the US has been a long and a challenging one. There were several milestones in this long journey. We bring you some highlights from over the last couple of centuries.
In 1789, George Washington was unanimously elected President of the United States in a vote by state electors. 1870, African Americans were allowed to cast a vote. 1919, women were granted the right to vote. 1951, Constitution was amended, limiting an elected president to 2 terms in office, that is, a total of 8 years. In the year 1960, the first ever presidential debates were held. John Kennedy and Republican candidate Vice President Richard Nixon took part in the first televised debate. In 1965, the then President Lyndon Johnson signed the Voting Rights Act prohibiting discriminatory voting practices. In 1974, Richard Nixon became the first U.S. president to resign from office. He was succeeded by his Vice President Gerald Ford. In the year 1992, President George Bush, Democrat Bill Clinton, and Reform Party founder Ross Perot took part in the first ever town hall format debate, where all 3 candidates for the top office answered questions from the audience. 2000, no clear winner was declared in a close presidential election contest between Bill Clinton's Vice President, Al Gore, and Texas Governor George W. Bush. Bush then formally accepted the presidency, having won a slim majority in the Electoral College, but not a majority of the popular vote. 2008, Democratic candidate Barack Obama, who was the senator of Illinois, became the first African American elected to the Oval Office.
Now, Clinton and Trump may be the front-runners for the role of president, but like each election, there are other candidates in the fray as well. There is Libertarian Gary Johnson, the former governor of New Mexico, Jill Stein from the Green Party, and Ivan McMillan is a prominent from among the independents. Traditionally, these contenders may not stand a chance to make it to the White House, but they can certainly impact the vote share of the two main contenders. According to many reports, two of the most unpopular candidates are running for the top post in the US this year. A chance for the third-party candidates to register again, however, that has not been the case. A latest opinion poll shows a drop in vote preference for Libertarian Gary Johnson, Jill Stein of the Green Party, and the independent presidential candidate Ivan McMillan are some of the most prominent among the other candidates. Jill Ellen Stein is an American physician, activist, and politician. She was also the Green Party's presidential nominee in 2012. Gary Johnson is a businessman, author, and politician. He was the 29th governor of New Mexico from 1995 to 2003 as a member of the Republican Party. Johnson was also the Libertarian Party's nominee for president in the 2012 election, and he received the most number of votes in the Libertarian Party history. Ivan McMillan, a former CIA operative, is standing as an independent candidate. Conservative McMillan is removing votes away from the Republican nominee Donald Trump in Utah, and said that even if he doesn't win the presidency, he hopes the success in Utah will signal the start of a new conservative movement. Though there is no clear-cut chance for either of them to enter the Oval Office, a change in vote share is sure to be a game-changer in this year's closely fought battle. One vote for Gary Johnson would mean one less for both Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. South Korean President Park Geun-hye said in a tearful apology on Friday that her heart was breaking over the influence peddling scandal that has engulfed her administration. She added that she will cooperate with the prosecutors in their investigation. In a brief televised address to journalists, Park said that prosecutors should clarify what happened and that everyone involved should be held accountable, including herself, and take responsibility if found guilty. 64-year-old Park's longtime friend Choi Soon-sil is alleged to have used her closeness to the president to meddle in the state affairs. Following the scandal, Park has faced growing calls from the public and political opponents to step down. South Korea's main opposition party leader Suu Mi-ae said Park's apology lacked sincerity and that her sole aim was to hold on to power. Heavy fighting continues in Mosul as Iraqi forces continue assault on the Islamic State militants. A military of eastern Mosul, expanding army's foothold in the IS stronghold. Earlier, Islamic State leader Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi told his followers there could not be any retreat from Mosul assault. The United Nations has said 22,000 people have been displaced since the start of the Mosul campaign. Thousands from outlying villages have also been allegedly forced to return to Mosul by the retreating Islamic State fighters who use them as human shields. Brexit woes continue to hit the UK. The latest and the most significant came when London High Court ruled that Parliament must vote on triggering Article 50, which would mean that Parliament, not the government, must approve the start of Britain's withdrawal from the European Union. The government will now take the ruling to Supreme Court. Trade Minister Liam Fox said the government is determined to respect the June referendum vote to leave the EU. Prime Minister Theresa May also told the EU that the Brexit timetable is still on track despite court ruling, as she plans to trigger the Article 50 by March next year. And this brings us to the end of this edition of World Connect. Do send us your feedbacks. You can write to us. Our email ID is worldconnect.ddnews@gmail.com. You can also log on to our Facebook page and tweet to us on @WorldConnectDD. And before we conclude, we leave you with Halloween celebrations from around the world. People paraded streets donning various costumes. Take a look. Goodbye.